Welcome to men's ministry. Thank you, ladies, for your presence here. Thank you for pretty much demanding that you are allowed to come. I think you did that once or twice before, and we said no. This time we couldn't get away with it. But a happy Sabbath to each one of you. For the men, for the guys, our next men's ministry will be the third Sabbath of March. Walt is going to present, and he wants to present to the 10 to about 20-year-olds. So we want to encourage that age group of male to come. We need to begin influencing that next generation even more than we already are. And so that is our intent, to be moving in that direction. I was thinking maybe we'd have a few other people from other churches here because that was advertised for other churches, and I was going to go over some of the other ministries that we do here. The ladies' ministry, everybody here is part of this congregation or are connected, there will be snacks afterwards. There are some fruit and drink and some snacks afterwards, as is typical for our men's ministry. So feel free. There's even a few vegan things, wheat-free things to help out with that. And so don't be afraid, because it's not going home with me. It'll land in the kitchen here, or somebody can have it to take home. It's not going home with me. So, but anyway, again, welcome. And Mark, I want you to introduce Bill to us, but also tell us, update us on your supper club for us too as well.
Good evening, everyone. Glad for your presence here. I was hoping that we would get more people here present. And I think that's the importance of the fact that we're talking about health. And I think that that's part of our religion, and as part of our gospel and everything, that we should be emphasizing that and try to have as many friends and family as we can be here. Also, I want to mention about every third of every month, we have our healthy meal that we prepare for our guests. And if you have friends and neighbors, please invite them to come, because we do have some healthy meals and things like that. And a lot of the people that have been coming so far have really enjoyed it and so forth. For introducing our guest speaker this evening, Dr. William Judy is a PhD. Judy received his doctorate degree in 1971. He served as an aerospace scientist with NASA and with the Indiana School of Medicine as professor in physiology. Dr. Judy has worked in the basic clinical research for over 40 years, focusing primarily on coenzyme, which is CoQ10. And we will find out the benefit of CoQ10. And believe me, it does have a tremendous amount of benefit to it. And I, like I mentioned this morning, that I've been taking that for a number of years, over 35 years. And it does, believe me, have a tremendous amount of benefit. And I think that when Dr. Judy gets up and starts his presentation, you will see some of the things. And I know some of the things she's getting pretty little deep. And hopefully that we can pick up some things out of that. And I think at some point in time, we will have a Q&A that someone will be able to answer. At this time, Dr. Judy. You want to set it at an angle?
Well, good evening. I want to start this out. This is a men's ministry. Tonight it's a ladies' ministry. And I'm going to have my young wife to come up here and read something to us about what God has done for us.
I just want to read a very familiar scripture passage from Genesis 1:26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and the birds of the air, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them. And in this marvelous body that God made for us, we have billions of cells. And in each cell, we have anywhere from 200 to 3,500 mitochondria. That's the powerhouse of the cell. And in each mitochondria, you find CoQ10. And thus begins our story. CoQ10 was there at creation, but was not really discovered until 1957. Now the slide says there's been 37 years of work, but that's an old slide. There's actually now been 48 years of research work done on CoQ10 that Bill's been involved in. So it's his passion, and he wants to share that with you. Thanks.
We've passed out. This past summer, I spent my time writing my first book for the lay population. I've written about 7 textbooks in science and many chapters in other books, but this is the first one I've written for this audience. And I hope that if you go through it, you have any questions, bring them to me. I love to talk. I don't say much in Sunday school class, but I still love to talk. This is an old picture. I don't look like this now. It's 10 years old. And as Jan said, I have now 51 years in CoQ research or something like that. I'm a Kentucky boy. I learned to talk in Mississippi, so I don't have a Kentucky accent of southern Indiana and northern Kentucky. But today I want to discuss with you God's gift to man. He's given us many gifts. And when he created us, he didn't tell us about the internal parts. We knew we had a brain, we knew we had a heart, maybe a liver. But he gave us something else. When Adam and Eve sinned in the center of the Garden of Eden, they gained something. He gave them the privilege of thinking for themselves. And it is the thought process over hundreds of thousands of years that have led to science. Now, anybody had told me 30 years ago, after being trained in classical physiology, taught every section of it, that I would be a natural products man. And I didn't know much about coenzyme Q10. It's called ubiquinone until 1968, and I met a professor at University of Texas. I was in the space program. And he led me down the path of natural products. And I do research in natural products now, and coenzyme Q10 has been a favorite of mine. Today I wanted to discuss with you the basic science of coenzyme Q10. Cyber Research is a company I formed 26 years ago, still going in Florida and here. I do my research under it. I want to answer the questions: what is coenzyme Q10? Where do we find it in nature? I want to discuss the CoQ molecule. Forms found in man, plants, animals, bacteria, the smallest to the largest animals. The physical characteristics of CoQ crystals. When we make CoQ in the outer membrane of the mitochondria in each cell, it is not a crystal. A crystal is a manufacturing process where they reconstitute in water and dry it. It's a purification process. It makes it very stable to store. You can store it for years and will not lose its sensitivity. But we don't have crystals in our body. If we did, we would clot off the bloodstreams. So the industry, the natural products industry, is where I was working in these years. It's probably one of the most corrupt industries in the world, because there was no science behind a lot of the natural products for years, and marketing people made up stories just to sell it. In the pharmaceutical industry, there's a controlling agency, the FDA. And if you can't get through the FDA, you don't sell it. If it's not safe, you don't sell it. But the natural products company, you could tell anything you want to, and as long as somebody didn't complain, well, you never got investigated by the FTC. I've been in front of the FTC on some of my programs, and it's not a very nice place to be because it's a group of attorneys with some science background and not a lot of other background. Okay, that's fine. I want to discuss the physical characteristics of this molecule, functions in man, the synthesis in man, the sources of coenzyme Q10, and the absorption and the bioavailability of it. If you can't absorb it, the body can't use it. And CoQ is a funny molecule. It's pretty big, 864 Daltons, and it's not very well absorbed because it's a lipid-soluble substance. In the early days, we just put the dry powder into a tablet or into a two-piece hard gel with cellulose and told you to take it. You could have probably absorbed maybe 0.75%. Then it came along, they put it in an oil, and you could absorb up to 3%. And now we have products that absorb between 8 and 12%. This picture is of Dr. Frederick Crane. He spent his entire career at Purdue University. I met him many, many years ago, and he discovered coenzyme Q10, or ubiquinol. He isolated it from beef heart mitochondria. I got a nervous finger up here today. Beef heart mitochondria at the University of Wisconsin in about 1957. It didn't hit the world market until the U.S. market until 1974. I learned about it in 1957. I was a sophomore in college. And I did my first research 1 year later. But Frederick Crane discovered it. He should have won a Nobel Prize, but the Nobel Prize went to an English investigator. But Frederick Crane died last year at the age of 97. And he was a tremendous scholar. Oops. We lost it. There we go. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. Slideshow. This is Professor Peter Mitchell. He's the man that won the Nobel Prize in 1978 on how the body makes energy. And he tied all the chemical reactions in the mitochondria. And the missing link to his hypothesis was discovery of coenzyme Q10. And when he was being considered for the Nobel Prize, Frederick Crane was there. Another man from the United States, Dr. Folkers, was there. We thought all three of them was going to get it, but only one of them got it, and this was Peter Mitchell. And he was an interesting guy in that he had a new thought every few minutes. But this is one of the things he followed through with for years. This man is a University of Illinois graduate. This is Dr. Carl Folkers. Now, I studied with him. And he graduated University of Illinois, got his doctorate there, went to NIH, then to Merck Sharp and Dome, where he spent 30 years ahead of medicinal chemistry. He won the Nobel Prize, but never accepted it. He won every reward in science except the Nobel Prize. And the Nobel Prize was won out of his lab twice. One at Merck Sharp and Dome, and the other at the Stanford Research Center, which he was the president of for 9 years. But he was my mentor. He lived to be 96 years of age. And he's the man that spread the clinical use of CoQ around the world. He had the patents on making CoQ from tobacco. He had the patent for CoQ made from bacteria. He had the patent for CoQ made from yeast. and he sold these patents to the Japanese, which made the industry out of it. His biggest discovery was vitamin B complexes. He discovered all the B complexes and their function. He should have won the Nobel Prize for that, but he didn't. Living forms, we find CoQ in all animals. Man, you and I have CoQ10. I'll show you that in a moment. Smaller animals such as rodents, mice, and rats have CoQ9. Plants, all except spinach and broccoli, have CoQ9. And Popeye was right when he ate the spinach, because spinach has CoQ10 and made him strong. Broccoli is the other one. And Frederick Crane isolated the CoQ10 from broccoli. He was a plant physiologist and chemist. There's two forms of it, or three forms of it found in our body. Ubiquinone is the oxidized form, and 90% in the mitochondria, maybe 2 to 5% in the blood. Semi-ubiquinone is a transient intermediate. It has many functions, but it's unstable. It's not on the market. And ubiquinone is a reduced form. It's an antioxidant. And it basically is the big leader in the industry right now. But the company who's marketing it is the largest CoQ producing company in the world. And they have a way of fabricating claims, which I'll make obvious to you. CoQ is a large molecule, 864 Daltons, oxidized form. Reduced form is 866. It's highly lipid soluble. It's not water soluble. It's stable in the oxidized form, ubiquinone, but unstable in the reduced form, ubiquinol. It's found in the phospholipid structures of membranes, are free and bound to LDL, the low-density lipoprotein. Is transported in the blood. Characteristics of CoQ crystal: millions of CoQ models in one small crystal. It is so small you can't see it with a light microscope. You have to have an electron microscope. The oxidized form is highly soluble, the non-soluble in water. The melting point is 47 degrees centigrade, 10 degrees, 12 degrees above body temperature. So if you take in this crystal form of it, it won't even dissociate in your stomach to single molecules so it can be absorbed. It's poorly soluble in lipid at body temperature. You have to raise the temperature of it to 50 degrees centigrade before it will go to single molecules. It's poorly absorbed by the intestinal cells of the small intestines. Until in 2004, there was not a product made that had above 3% absorption. So you see a label on a bottle that says 100% absorbable. And it's a highly absorbed. If you don't print what it is, and my company was our company was one of the first companies that tried to open the public's eyes to what was really happening. That people were trying to take CoQ for health benefits and couldn't absorb it. But things are changing now. Now, this is a structure. Here is the well, it's my day. This is a redox. I do. Okay. Ubiquinone function, it's essential for energy. If you run out of CoQ, you're dead. Now, if you run out of oxygen, you're dead too. But they go together, because oxygen and CoQ go in to form adenine triphosphate, which is the energy unit in the body. The semiquinone has many functions. It's a protein activation and turnover. It's a hormone neuroregulator, growth factor many. I knew a scientist who did this in Australia. He died at 98. So right now, I guess I'm the oldest man still functioning in the CoQ industry in the world. And I consider 80 young. My mother took CoQ 47 years. She had 16 days of being 99 years of age. And she beat heart failure. She beat cancer. She gave the credit to CoQ. I gave it to good medicine. But it has a place in the world. The ubiquinol is an antioxidant. But we have 3 other naturally synthesized antioxidants in our body. So it's one of 4. Which one is the best? We don't know. But ubiquinol lives in the cell. And it's high in the blood, where we don't produce energy. It's high in the lymph, where we don't produce energy. This is the redox. The redox is that the ubiquinol will go to semiquinol to ubiquinone. And it's a cycle, just keeps, and it rotates. And therefore, if you take in ubiquinone, and the body needs ubiquinol, it will convert the ubiquinone to ubiquinol. If you take in ubiquinol, and the body needs ubiquinone, it'll convert it to ubiquinol. So it's called the CoQ cycle. And this cycle is what Peter Mitchell won his Nobel Prize on. Synthesis, body, 75% of the CoQ in your body is synthesized in the cell. Dietary sources, protein had 20%, fats have 4%, carbohydrates 1%. The supplementation is the only way that you can replace deficiency of CoQ in your body. Why? Because all but 2 plants have CoQ9. And you get it from animal protein, and it's 7-day Adventist. We do not eat animal protein. So a supplement is the best way to replenish a deficiency of CoQ in your body. But they're not all the same. Some are good, some are bad. And unfortunately, the government regulatory agencies have nothing on that label to let you know which is a good and which is a bad one. Well, let me tell you, how many gallons of chopped spinach would you have to eat a day to get your daily requirement of CoQ of 3.5 milligrams? 4 gallons. Who can eat 4 gallons of chopped spinach? How much beefsteak would you have to eat a day to get your 3.5 milligrams of CoQ? 10. About 2.5 pounds. So really, realistically, a good supplement is the cheapest way you can go. This is the synthesis of CoQ. It starts with acetyl-CoA and tyrosine, which is amino acid. Goes down to HMG-CoA, down to mandelic acid pathway. We produce ubiquinone, CoQ10, dilacol, and cholesterol. Oh, cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and CoQ are made in the same synthesis pathway. And that's why when you take a statin drug, an HMG-CoA reductase, it diminishes the CoQ that your body can produce. And this is why some doctors will tell you, if you're on a statin drug, take CoQ to keep your CoQ levels up. And it really works. Functions of CoQ, ubiquinone, energy. Semiquinone has many functions. Ubiquinol is only an antioxidant. It does not participate in the energy synthesis pathway. The CoQ, ubiquinone, that participates in this pathway has to be an electron acceptor to carry it across the membrane. Ubiquinol is an electron donor. And this was Peter Mitchell's theory. That theory is almost 50 years old now. And a lot of us have tried to destroy it scientifically. We've done nothing but make it better. You and I take in proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And in our stomach and the intestines, we break the protein down to amino acids, carbohydrates and simple sugars, and the fats, fatty acids. And this is fed through glycolysis, the Krebs cycle. And down here on the end, you'll see here CoQ10. And when you combine oxygen with CoQ10 in the inner membrane of the mitochondria, you produce 34 units of ATP, high energy phosphate. That's 95% of the energy that your body produces. You tell me that this is not essential for life? Some people think ribose is, but ribose is not in this pathway. So what's happening, I went to Japan 1983, and I was trained by the Japanese. I had 9 Japanese teachers in my graduate studies, so I went to see them. I went to a meeting, and a good friend of mine, who's now passed away, a Dr. Jack Hall in this town, a cardiologist, I took him with me. We sat there for 2 days listening to all these presentations, and Dr. Hall looked over to me and he said, you know, if it would just open the pearly gates of heaven, we'd all have it made. Now, the Japanese claimed that it was good for everything. One of the things that's happened to me in the last 51 years, it is important in life processes, and a lot of processes can be enhanced with coenzyme Q10. Where do we find it? Every organelle in the cell has it, but we find in the inner membrane of mitochondria it's high concentration, Golgi vessels. Why is it in these other things that don't produce energy? Are they alive? Sure. Are they bombarded by free radicals and superoxides that destroy their membranes? And these other portions of the cell, they're there to protect the cell against the corrosive actions of superoxides and free radicals. That's why we need ubiquinol. But the company who markets it says that every person over 40 years needs to take this product. Well, science tells us that if you look at studies around the world, that the Indian population over in Asia, maybe 24% have a deficiency of ubiquinol at the age of 40. Chinese, 21%. Mexican population, 19%. The American population, the Caucasians in Europe and the United States only have 4%. 4% of the people over 40 years of age have a mutation of the gene that controls the conversion of ubiquinone to ubiquinol in our body. Just 4%. 4% is a lot of people in the United States, but not everybody needs it. This is the Q cycle. Again, you're rotating it around and around, and as your body needs one form, it's going to convert it. If it needs another form, it's going to convert it. Now, this led Peter Mitchell to propose that we could never run out of CoQ. It's like a perpetual motion machine. And Dr. Carl Folkers didn't believe that. Folkers started testing thousands and thousands of patients. And he found out that the normal level in man was about 0.81 micrograms per milliliter. But people with heart failure, people with cancers, had low levels, 0.5, 0.3. So he knew there was CoQ deficiencies by looking at it in the blood and the tissue of man. This is the NOQ1 gene. Here, Caucasians have 5% of the people, Afro-Americans 7%, Indians 22%, Chinese 19%, Mexicans. Now, what do these people who have ubiquinol deficiencies, what do they suffer from? Well, without CoQ, they're going to age quickly. So they have rapid aging. They have low energy syndromes, early onset of degenerative diseases, and a lot of cancers, especially skin cancers. This is a figure that shows you CoQ as a function of age. At birth, CoQ is very low, about 0.2 to 0.5 micrograms per milliliter. It peaks at the age of 21. And after 21, it slowly declines. Well, when you're 65, you're about a quart low. You need more CoQ. But here's 3 generations. The red is above normal, the yellow is normal, and the green is subnormal. And this green takes in a lot of babies, genetically modified babies, that have no energy. They're called floppy babies. We found it in low energy Down syndrome. I treat a group of babies with CoQ and they 3 days of age. Has no adverse side effects. It's safe. But these babies can't move. Within 3 days after giving them CoQ, they can suckle the bottle. They have that kind of energy. And they don't grow in about 3.5 feet tall. They get big and heavy because they can't convert carbohydrate to energy. With CoQ, they develop muscle, and with growth hormone, we make them grow. Prader-Willi syndrome. It was discovered, Prader-Willi was discovered in the same year as CoQ, 1957. And they didn't come together until 1996 with one little girl who had not moved anything except her eyes in 6 months. And within 6 hours after getting the first CoQ dose, she was moving her arms and legs. In 12 hours, she was trying to suckle her toe. She's now 22 years old in a junior college. These kids are smart, but they have manic compulsive dispositions. And we've not solved that. They're still inquisitive. They're good at puzzles. But now we have them going to college. Even the boys playing football with coenzyme Q and growth hormone. How much do you need today? There's a slow turnover rate in the body. Sedentary people need maybe 3 milligrams a day. Athletes, maybe 5. Clinically ill people, we don't know. But we do know we have to drive the blood levels to 3.5 micrograms per milliliter, which is 4 times normal, to see a good clinical response in heart failure patients, Parkinson patients, cancer patients, and so forth. Let's talk about absorption and bioavailability. Relatively poor absorption due to a large molecular size. Slowly appears in blood 3 to 4 hours. Peaks in blood in 5 to 8 hours. It requires a lipid carrier to be going from the intestines into the blood or to the cell. It has to be tagged by a lipid. And that lipid is the low-density lipoprotein. It's not the same, absorption is not the same for all products. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. And you can't find out by looking at the label which is a good one, which is a bad one. It is a passive diffusion process by which they're absorbed. It's a facilitated. That means it has to have something to facilitate its absorption, and that something is a monoglyceride. People put triglycerides and diglycerides in these formulations. The body can't absorb a triglyceride or diglyceride. They have to be broken down to monoglycerides. The best product out there has a monoglyceride. It took 6 years to find that monoglyceride. Absorption is the amount of CoQ that is absorbed with a single dose. And that's what we do. We put people on no food, lower the CoQ to basal in the morning at 6 o'clock, give them a CoQ capsule with a meal with no CoQ in it, and then measure it in the blood. And now I realize that the blood is the wrong place to measure CoQ. If you really want to know how the absorption is, you need to measure it in the lymph, because all lipid-soluble molecules this large are transported to the blood in the lymph. And this is my next paper I hope to put out. But it's a facilitated diffusion. It's lipid transport, slowly a poor process. It's a dual transport from the intestines to the cell. The intestines, it has to go through the lymphatic system first, then into the circulatory system. And in the circulatory system in the blood, it's bound by the low-density lipoprotein molecule. This just shows you a figure of, we put catheters in the abdominal lymph, the thoracic lymph, the mesenteric vein, and the femoral vein. And you see it peak in white here in the abdominal lymph first, or in yellow, then in white in the thoracic, and then in the blood 6 hours later. It takes 6 hours for it to completely be transported from the absorption cell to the blood. But you can see it early in the lymph. This is a CoQ capsule. I want you to look at that capsule. I think we have a few here. This is a new CoQ. It's a crystal-free. There's no, you can see right straight through the capsule. It has, it's a tri-lipid formulation. It's stable with no recrystallization. I've looked at it for 6 years on my shelf in my office, and it is not crystallized at all. It has a rapid and superior absorption. It's highly stable, and it requires small dosage. So why did we develop this crystal-free CoQ product? I gave a lecture in Japan several years ago. In Japan, CoQ was a drug for 21 years. And before they deregulated it, they wanted a big lecture on it. So I gave a lecture to 17,000 people at the Tokyo Convention Center, 9,000 people at the Osaka Convention Center. And it was, I thought, the peak of my career to speak to so many people. But at that time, there was only 12 million people in Japan taking it every day, and they were all heart failure patients. It was approved for heart failure. Within 1 year after it was deregulated, 36 million people were taking it every day in Japan. There was 3 manufacturers of CoQ in Japan at this time. It put such a burden on them, they couldn't keep up with the demand. It went from $800 to $400 to $800 a kilogram. We couldn't even afford to buy it here, much less sell it for the price we had to buy it for. So that's when my wife and some friends and I decided we need to develop a product that was crystal-free, that was highly absorbed, and you could take much less of it. We got CoQ capsules out there now at 200 milligrams. And that one she's passing out, you only need 50 milligrams a day to get your body's needs. But this is the absorption of that product in yellow. It has about little above the 3.5 micrograms per milliliter in 6 hours or 8 hours. The white is in a normal crystal form, very poorly absorbed. We'll discuss that. This is the single dose was the first curve. This is a steady state curve. If you notice, in about 14 days, it comes up and plateaus in blood. And it can raise the plasma level up to over 8,000 micrograms per total in about 14 days. So the other is less than 2,000 micrograms total. So it's a highly absorbed product. And the only reason, it's single molecules with a monoglyceride carrier. This is a slide that shows you many different types of CoQ: dry powder and oil, liposomes and oil, nanoproducts, reduced form, and the new crystal-free. Crystal-free is in yellow. Look there, it has 8% absorption. The rest of them do well to have 3% absorption. So we got a future now with CoQ. This molecule here is only, this formulation in yellow there is only 6 years old. It's patented. It's marketed by one company, leased the patent for 7 years, and have set on it. Developed no marketing because they didn't want to interfere with their current product. And the only other company that can sell it, since my name's on the patent, my little company can sell it. And that's a company called Cytomed out of Florida. and we'll leave a list where you can do that. Single dose of kinetics. This is just a bunch of kinetics, but the big thing is it has better kinetics than any of the powdered-based crystalline forms of CoQ. This shows you I do a lot of microscopic work. This shows you CoQ dry powder on the first panel at 24 degrees in a lipid, at 60 degrees in a lipid, and then back at 24. Well, look here, at 24 degrees, room temperature, there's crystals. At 60 degrees, there's no crystals. And when you cool it back down, one of them has crystals and the other one doesn't. And this other one that doesn't is the new lipid-soluble CoQ non-crystalline form. It will not recrystallize. There's two other products out there, and both companies, it's unstable because it recrystallizes in the capsule. And that's why they put these in a colored capsule so you can't see the crystals. Turnover rate, we went through this. Sedentary people, 3 to 4 milligrams a day. Athletes, 3 to 6. Smokers, 5 to 8. Clinical conditions unknown. We've been through the absorption. This shows you a bunch of products out there. CoQ Sol, CoQ Zorb, Poly-CoQ, CoQ Sol again, Q-Best, which is a lipid soluble, Q-Sorb, Q-Reduce, Q-Gel. And all of them have crystals except the Q-Best product. And that's the reason it has an 8% absorption. All of them are in colored capsules so you can't see the crystals if you hold it up to a light. And I refuse to put mine in a colored capsule because I want you to see that there's no crystals. This is the steady state bioavailability of different doses up to 300 with the Q-Best product and with the Conica ubiquinol. And you see that the Q-Best formula will drive it up close to 10 at 300 milligrams, where the ubiquinol only a little bit above 5. So there is a major difference in whether it's a single molecular form or whether it's a crystalline form. Advantages of the non-crystalline form: it's all natural formulation. It's single molecules with no crystals. It's rapid and superior absorption. Superior steady state bioavailability. We can maintain high blood levels. It's stable with no crystallization. It's high percentage of clinical responders. For example, on heart failure, we can see as much as 75 to 80% of the people who take it who have improved cardiac function. In Parkinson's disease, it appears to reduce the progression of the disease by almost 50% in early onset Parkinson's. But in the clinical trials done by the NIH, we don't see that good of effect in late stage Parkinson's disease. In cancers, early onset cancers, prostate cancers, we can see significant effects. But we can't see it in the older, critically ill cancer patients. This is Professor John Paulo Lautaru. He is the past president of the International CoQ Association, just retired. I'm glad he retired at 67. He's got 9 grandkids, and he loves to play with his grandkids. But we have a new president now of the association. This is a picture of what the Japanese claimed that CoQ was good for. And if you look at that, there may be 60 items on there. If the CoQ would just open up the pearly gates of heaven, we'd all have it made. I want to show you something. This is, again, different forms until 2004, 2006. All the CoQs in the world had about the same absorption. And when we developed the crystal-free form, we had a good product. Let's hope that it has a future. The progression, CoQ sales in the United States have gone up to about, in 2015, in 2015 they projected we'd have 25 million. We didn't have that. We had basically 15 million, 12 million. But that's a lot of people taking CoQ every day. Tremendous business for the companies who make it. Well, this is my pride and joy. I started out, university wouldn't let me do research in CoQ. They tried to buy the factories, Eli Lilly did, from the Japanese, and they wouldn't sell it. I had to go to Memphis Hospital to get a protocol approved so I could give CoQ to heart failure patients. Dr. Folkers and I decided after the third year we wanted to do a long-term study. We did a 30-year study with over 500 class 3 and class 4 heart failure patients. The red, or the pink, is those people's survival statistics who got conventional therapy and a placebo. All of them were dead within 10 years. The green is the group that got conventional therapy with CoQ. At 4 years, we had 58% still living versus 17%. At 8 years, we had 48 versus 0. And at 20 years, we had 23% versus 0. And today, I still have 2 of these people living, both of them in their late 90s. Both of them in pretty good health. But I haven't published this until I put it in this book. The only other, been 3 other studies. A good friend of mine, Dr. Mortensen in Denmark, has run a 500 patient study. And it was only a 2-year study. And he found out that he could reduce the mortality rate by 48% for cardiac deaths and by 50% overall deaths. And emergency rehospitalizations he reduced by 48%. He's since passed away, and his daughter just presented a paper. She reworked the data, and over 60% of the people who were Europeans in that study had improved survival. Less acute cardiac events by over 60%, and less hospitalizations by 58%. So I'm going to close this. I hope I've given you some insight. I've taught more science than that I have practical everyday benefits. But you have questions, and I'd be happy to answer these questions. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think everybody should take it. Let me tell you, if you don't have a deficiency, you can't tell if you're taking it because it's not like a drug. It's a coenzyme. And so if you don't have a deficiency, there's no need for you to take it. But when you get to be 65 and your energy goes down, then you need to take it. If you have a disease like heart failure, Parkinson's, cancers, low energy syndrome, I treat a lot of chronic fatigue patients. Roughest patients I've ever worked with because everybody thought they were, crocs. But there's a chronic fatigue is a true clinical entity. They have low energy. They can get up in the morning, walk down the stairs and fix breakfast and can't climb the stairs after they fix breakfast. They stay home all day long. But CoQ, it takes a long time. In 6 months, you can have them back on their feet. If they stop taking it, if you're a heart failure patient, if you're a chronic fatigue patient, a cancer patient, and you stop taking it, your blood levels are going to go down and you're going to have a clinical relapse. Matter of fact, that's what we had here at Methodist Hospital. And we had to go back to the FDA and get special permission to put the first heart failure patients we put back on CoQ when they had a clinical relapse. We had 3 of them to die Doctors were mad at me. But that's science. You have to blind things. Oh, yeah. Merck Sharp and Dome at their Cancer Research Center in West Point, Pennsylvania, in 1996 published a paper. And they found out that a grandfather of coenzyme Q10 in the medallic acid pathway where it's synthesized would stop the growth of cancer in cell line studies in animals. 2 years later, Duke University backed it up, North Carolina University backed it up, University of Tampa backed it up. So they decided, well, this is a non-patentable stuff. Drug companies need something they can protect and patent. So they put their scientists on making a synthetic of it. It's been 20 years. They've made nothing but a good rat poison. People, I'm telling you, we cannot improve on what God gave us. No way on earth. But I have a friend who's Malaysian who was looking for something with tocotrienols in it, another substrate of vitamin E. And he isolated in this fraction from a plant 20% of this grandfather of CoQ. And now he's been through the cell line studies, he's been through the animal studies, and now he's petitioned the FDA to let him give it to humans. And Merck Sharp and Dome tried to buy, he has it patented. They offered him millions and millions for his patent, and he would not sell it. His brother-in-law was the president of Merck Sharp and Dome. That's why he wouldn't sell it. But, you know, science is slow. Many a times that I thought I wasn't getting any place, and somebody would make a discovery, or I'd make a new discovery, and we'd get a big step. Science is slow. It does not happen overnight, and that's why our drug companies spend millions and millions of dollars in investigation of drugs. The nice thing about coenzyme Q10, it's natural, it's God-given, and it has no adverse side effects. Any side effects that come from CoQ is what we put in with it, like a lipid. They may get some nausea. And that's about the only thing I've seen. I have a brother-in-law that had an arrhythmia, same one my wife had. Anti-arrhythmic drugs wouldn't touch him. Even anesthesiologists, he'd get faint at the anesthesia table. I put him on CoQ, it's gone away. But he could not take 100 milligrams a day because it made him nervous. And it will. It'll crank you up if you have deficiency. He takes 50 milligrams 2 days a week. He has no more arrhythmias. So I see a future in this country for this natural product. Most natural products that come into the United States have a 2-year honeymoon period due to the money to advertise it. Then they slowly die away. CoQ came into the industry in '74, and in 2019, it's the 3rd largest selling natural product in the United States. And another question.
CoQ10 functions in cancers, you know, the immune system, the killer T cells,
Yeah, you know, we have natural T killer cells, which are known to kill the cancer cell by a cytotoxin. That's been shown in a dissertation at the University of Texas in Houston. CoQ enhances the natural T killer cell to make more cytotoxin. If they have a CoQ deficiency in these T killer cells, they can't make the cytotoxin. And this grandfather of CoQ that stops the growth of cancer does not kill the cancer. The theory is that it stops the growth. And then the T cells kill the cancers, and the macrophages chew them up and get rid of the body. I've seen breast cancers disappear. I've seen colon cancers disappear. Skin cancers disappear. And for a long time, I couldn't explain it. But now there are some theories. Science is slow. Yes.
approach. Your experience with people who have atrial flutter and atrial fibrillation, how do you characterize the effects of this on those two areas?
Well, it goes back to 1984. Japanese scientists showed that coenzyme Q10 stabilizes the cardiac muscle cell, pacemaker cells, and conducting cells. Otherwise, the cells in the heart are unusual. They don't have a steady state resting potential. It's a slow climbing potential, and when it reaches the threshold, it fires and makes an arrhythmia. Well, CoQ basically hyperpolarizes the membrane so they don't come to threshold and fire, and therefore early onset atrial fibrillation, we can stop in about 7 days. But late, if you've had atrial fib for years, it has very little effect. I have a patient that I met at the University of Texas, 1963. He was a surgical resident in Memphis Hospital in Houston. We drank a few beers together back in those days. I was living in Bradenton, Florida, and I get a call from this man one day. And he was the first heart surgeon in Tampa, Florida. He was retired. He was the head of the Health and Hospital Corporation at that time, the medical director. His mother was dying of heart failure, and he wanted CoQ, and he found my name on the computer. Anybody can recognize Judy, you know, and he called me. We gave his mother 8 good years after that. Then he came back to me about 2 years later and says, I got a problem. I said, what's that? He says, I have an extra heartbeat of 2,400 ventricular systoles a day. I said, 2,400? He says, I had to retire. I put him on CoQ, and in 6 months, he had 50 a day. Now, he was a very unusual man. He was an MD plus an attorney. He got so healthy, he made a second career out of his law degree. He's now an arbitrator for the courts on cases of lawsuits between drug companies. And he's very good, he's very bright, but we solved his arrhythmias where classical drugs would not touch him. And the only reason is that CoQ runs the energy pumps on the membranes to make the electrolyte distribution around those membranes normal so they will not come to threshold. That's how it works. Another question? Yes?
Your capsule that we got, where do you get the CoQ10 that goes into it?
Well, CoQ10 are made from 3 sources. I was raised on a Burley tobacco farm. Tobacco has CoQ9. And the first CoQ made was extracted CoQ9 from tobacco, raised in India, and with a partial synthesis turned into CoQ10. The second process that Dr. Folkers and I remember when our fathers used to make a compost pile and garden in the backyard, and they would throw a pile of cow manure in it, and it would sit there and steam, and snow would snow on it, the snow would melt quick, and all this steam would come. And in the spring, we turn it over and we see these little yellow beads. I thought they were little yellow mushrooms. He thought they were little yellow mushrooms. Being a scientist, he collected them and found out they were pure CoQ10. And then the biologists and the molecular people at Merck Sharp and Dome found out it was a bacteria called Pseudomonas iris, made pure CoQ10. He got a patent on it, and that was the second way it was made. But bugs get sick like anything else. And then he found out that yeast made CoQ6, and you could fermentate yeast, grow yeast, and scrape off the CoQ6 and convert it to CoQ10. But the Japanese, I've always accused them of having genetically modified yeast. They have a strain of yeast that makes pure CoQ10 now. So most of the CoQ produced in the world is by this one company from yeast fermentation extraction. No more tobacco, but there are maybe 7 companies in the world that make it from the bacterium now. It's especially China. And China will probably become the leading CoQ producer in the world in a few years. Well, they dry it, the purity of CoQ. They dry it over and over, excuse me, and they say it's 99.9% pure. But that doesn't help the absorption of it. If it's a crystal, you can't absorb it. Yes.
How does it help?
I've been diabetic for 20 years now. And it's the worst disease I think you can have because it's silent. I can have a sugar of 500 and not know it. But right now, I'm well controlled and I get hypoglycemic. Now, my study showed that a young onset type 2 diabetic, we can see no hypoglycemic effect with CoQ. Doesn't help them. But if you take a person my age who's become refractory to his insulin, and he's got a low CoQ, you give him CoQ, and his refractoriness to insulin goes away. Otherwise, he can take the insulin and keep the sugar down. But you have to have a low CoQ for that to happen. So how does CoQ do that? Everything associated with sugar in our body is processed by an active transport. It's absorbed by active transport. It's transported from the blood to the cell by an active transport, a carrier molecule. It goes into the cell and is carried into the cellular components by active energy. And if you have an energy deficiency secondary to CoQ deficiencies, your diabetes will be out of control. Answer your question? Now that's type 1, and he's going to be an insulin, and I've had so much trouble with insulin, taking insulin. They got me on 50 units every night of the slow acting and 60 units of the fast acting after every meal, 20 after every meal, and I swear up and down, I can be under control 1 month, get a new batch of insulin, a new lot number, and my sugars go up, and I blame it on the insulin. Now, I haven't changed my diet or anything. For 2 months, I've had good insulin. But I don't like the hypoglycemic spells. They just absolutely knock me off my feet. If my blood sugar gets down to 68 to 70, I know I'm going to have it. So I grab an orange or a candy bar or something. Yes?
Have you broken this down among the different racial groups as its effectiveness?
Is effectiveness based upon the race?
Based upon racial groups throughout the world.
Yes. I did some work for some Indian companies. And they had a product that was sold in this country called Fast Melt. And the company I consulted with was trying to sell it. And they claimed that it peaked in the blood in an hour and a half after you ingested it. Well, that means it has to be absorbed underneath the tongue. You get very little absorption in the stomach. So they hired my company to reproduce the Indian company's data since it was being sold in the United States, taken by Caucasians. And I saw it peak in blood in 6 to 8 hours. And I don't think, although you have a lot of lymphatic vessels underneath the tongue, I don't think you can absorb that much under the tongue for a molecule that large. You can urea and some of these small molecules, but a molecule as big as CoQ, the absorption area underneath the tongue is the size of a postage stamp. The absorption area of your intestines for CoQ is the size of a basketball court. So how can you expect to get it? And B12, vitamin B12, they say it's absorbed underneath the tongue. Well, you have to have an intrinsic factor in your intestines to absorb vitamin B12. you don't find that intrinsic factor underneath the tongue. So there's a lot of misconceptions in the natural products just to sell a product.
Inferring was, in your research, let's say Chinese, have you done studies on people who are in China?
Yes, I haven't done these studies, but there's a doctor at the University of Colorado by the name of Ross, and his group have looked at the Indians, the Chinese, the Mexicans, the Caucasians in the world, and we do find differences between ethnic groups. For example, India, they're Hindus. Most of them are vegetarians. They have blood CoQ levels of 0.2 to 0.3. In the United States, we're not all vegetarians. They have blood levels of 0.78 to 0.82. So it depends on your diet. Chinese have low CoQs because of their diet. So, you know, I go to this church. I live with my wife, who's an ardent or vegan now, and I've had to learn to eat tofu. It depends on how you fix it. But, you know, what gets me is, in my experience, why do we have to drive the blood levels from 0.45 in heart failure to 3.5 to get an effective therapeutic regime, when the normal blood levels at a 21-year-old is 1.4? Well, we're going twice that. Age 65, we're 0.675. Why do we have to drive the blood level so high? And I think it's due to the fact the large molecule and the absorption of across these cell membranes decreases as a function of age.
Which is the coenzyme Q10, right?
Mm-hmm.
At what age does it start dropping off where you need some supplement to build that CoQ10 back up in your system? Or is there a maintenance?
Yeah, there's a very good question. My studies show that when you're ready to retire at 65, if you've had no health problems and you're beginning to slow down, you don't have the step that you used to have, don't have the spark, you need to take a supplement, 50 milligrams to 100 milligrams a day. If you have a age-related degenerative disease such as heart failure, Parkinson's, cancers, then you need to think about taking 250 milligrams a day.
Question is the mere fact that everybody probably here does not have a good baseline as to say what their cholesterol, what their blood pressure is, or all of those things whatsoever. Then if they go to the doctor, they need to get that good baseline to find out where am I as far as health is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that, okay, once you find this out, based upon that information, then you decide to, okay, this is what I need to be taking as far as the CoQ10 is concerned.
When a patient comes in to see, we do a lot of research, and we measure blood CoQs in everyone. And if you come to me and you got less than 0.6, I'm going to put you on CoQ, especially if you have any of the symptoms of low energy and early onset degenerative diseases. And if you have well-formed heart failure, Parkinson's, and so forth, I'm going to recommend 200 or better. No, it starts going down at 21. And by the time you're 65, I said you were a quart low. You have half as much in your blood as you had, or in your cell as you had when you were 21. Other question? Yeah, statin drugs is the most prolific drug in the world now. And it's not without adversities. A lot of people can't take the statin drug more than a year without having muscle cramps, muscle pain, low energy. And the reason that they have these muscle cramps and low energy is because the statin drug blocks the synthesis of coenzyme Q10. Ubiquinol, coenzyme Q10, cholesterol, LDL, and dilacol are all in the same metabolic pathway in their synthesis in the body. So if you block cholesterol synthesis, you block CoQ synthesis. And I've seen it work. My older brother was an athlete. He ran 4 or 5 miles a day. They put him on a statin drug, and he just was an epitome of poor health. And I put him on CoQ, and now he's back running again. He didn't stop his statin drug. I just raised his CoQ levels from 0.46 without heart failure to 3.2. And he has the energy in his muscles. His muscle has rebounded. They had atrophied. He has well-formed muscles now. He can go out and run 5 miles with no problem.
Take to see what their CoQ enzyme level is. There is a blood test that a patient could take
Yes.
to see what that level
The
is.
Quest laboratories, the precision laboratories, you can measure, have a CoQ. Life Extensions in Florida will measure your CoQ for you. They're very expensive. They're $185 a sample. Man, Medicare and Medicaid won't pay for them. Your insurance company won't pay for them. Yeah, I want to do a study for a company right now. It's $10,000 just to have CoQ samples done. It's very expensive. And at one time, about 10 years ago, they thought CoQ was going to climb the ladder and everybody's going to have their blood levels. So many of these laboratories developed tests for them. It didn't pan out. We haven't grown as fast as we thought we would. And the doctors would take your symptoms, and if your symptoms show low energy, low exercise tolerance, so forth, they'll just put you on CoQ without measuring the CoQ levels. There's a lot of clinical conditions that can cause low energy syndrome. Thyroid disease, Addison's disease. And so just taking a blood level is not the only answer.
That patients are taking today, and so much side effects and so forth, that a lot of us don't realize what the side effects are on some of the medications. But the mere fact that we have to take some of the medications for some of the medical problems, does that coenzyme help with some of the side effects, to offset some of the side effects from that medication?
And Dr. Peter Langston at the University of Texas in Temple, Texas, has shown when hypertensive patients taking CoQ, you can reduce the hypertensive therapeutic medications by 60%. In heart failure patients, you can reduce the level of cardiac drugs by 48%. So, you know, it has a cost containment effect, but it appears that once you crank up the cell has the ability to take care of itself. That's God-given. That's God-given. That's not man. I think man, and I know there's some drug company former members here. Drugs have side effects. CoQ has none as severe. And you can take CoQ for years without side effects. And I've seen it. I've lived it. Yes.
If I could follow up on a question that the Mays asked. So you said at the age of 21, the CoQ levels in your system start going down, right?
Yes.
And I think
peak at age, about the age of 21.
About the age of 21. So I think what he had asked about, so basically, as opposed to me waiting until I'm 65 when my energy is depleted, what can I do, especially with the research that you have done in the meantime, for now, when I'm still Is there anything that I can do, or I just gonna have to wait until I?
You know what,
Bottom out.
you know what the stimulus for CoQ synthesis in the body is? Exercise. It's produced in the mitochondria. If you exercise, you produce more mitochondria, you make more CoQ. It's been shown in cyclists in Europe that basically the cyclists have higher CoQs than almost anybody else because they are always exercising. They can run them up to 5 micrograms per milliliter. So exercise is the key feature of increasing your blood levels of CoQ.
Was watching at home, so she can let me go bike riding.
That I pulled offline. And believe me, I mean, it's very impressive. We talk about heart condition. We talk about CoQ10. Parkinson's disease, CoQ10. Like you said about statins, taking CoQ10. Migraines, CoQ10. To ease some of the problems that people have with migraine headaches and Parkinson's. I mean, there's so much literature, the benefit of CoQ10. And I'm just...
The two forms of CoQ10 out there now, the oxidized form, which has been around for years, and the reduced form only since 2006. There's probably maybe 10,000 publications where the ubiquinol, the oxidized form, was used. The ubiquinol product, the reduced form, has only been out there for maybe 10 years, 12 years. And they haven't had time to do a lot of clinical studies. And let's face it, these natural products companies do not want to put their money into research. They let scientists like me do the research, then they claim it and advertise it, and we get nothing for it, and they get the benefits. But, you know, I'd like to sum it up by saying that my 51 years of experience have been exciting. I don't know why the good Lord has kept me here. One time I thought it was these babies that we treat. But maybe there's more for me to learn and more for you to learn. And maybe there will be a future for this in the country. I know of, right now, 3 companies where it's a drug, 3 countries. And it's sold in almost every country in the world as a natural product. And since it's non-patentable, drug companies in the United States won't take a hold of it because they have policy, they have shareholders that have to make money. And I think the key factor, I was told one time I couldn't do research at one of the local hospitals because Lilly didn't want me to do it. Somebody donated several $100,000 to me to continue my work, so it didn't stop me. But I think there's a lot of fear by some of the drug companies, especially small drug companies, that natural products will take over some of the mainline medicine. They will, if you look at the adversities. If you look at the TV right now, every drug out there on the TV tells you the adversities. And the reason they do this is people do not read the inserts. So when it comes up to a lawsuit, well, they have no excuse for not reading the insert. We have it on every television station. We tell the people what the adversities are. They can't say they didn't know. And the highest cost of a drug company, I understand right now, is litigation. They have more attorneys hired than they do scientists. Other questions?
My question is, you say that there's no side effects for taking this CoQ10. So can you overdose on CoQ10? And if you do overdose, what are the side effects or the consequences?
Well, I've always wanted an IV form of CoQ to give acute heart failure patients that just had a heart attack. Now, I had a heart attack, and my wife brought me 600 milligrams, and I took it this way. But I thought an IV formulation, and the Japanese had one. in the 80s. And they had to be mixed up at bedside to make sure it had no crystals. And they could have a person that had a major heart attack and the next morning up and hungry. And they saved the heart. But they killed a few patients by not getting all the crystals out of it. They cluttered off the bloodstream. They drove the blood levels up to 24 micrograms per milliliter. Now, I've seen a 500 milligram capsule. People have no side effects of taking it, but it's a dry powder. So there is basically no clinically acute adversities to coenzyme Q10. You can't overdose. Yeah, Dr. Folkers used to say 99% wound up in the sewer. Your body just gets rid of it.
For the crystallized and non-crystallized, how do you know? On the market we have both, or those on the market that they are not non-crystallized?
They don't know. I look at it under a microscope.
So like
And if I can hold a capsule up, not see the crystals in there, if it's cloudy, there's crystals in it. There's no, CoQ is so small, it will not stop light going through it. So, you know, you have to hold the capsule, but they put it in a colored capsule so you can't see it.
So they don't even say that on the bottle?
No. Well, matter of fact, most of them don't even know it.
Yeah.
Well, I look at all the natural products on the health food counter at the grocery store and the drugstore, and I don't find the label giving us much information about whether this is a safe product. A lot of people put polyethylene glycol, which is antifreeze, a wetting agent, in CoQ. One company was putting 13%. And the FDA stopped them. And now they're putting polysorbate 80, which is another wetting agent. And they claim that this product is both lipid soluble and water soluble. It's not. The polysorbate 80 just coats its crystal and makes it look like a water-soluble product. It will disperse into the water, but it will not dissociate the single molecules. So, you know, there is I hate to use the word, dishonesty in the natural product industry. Yeah. Well, I'm a scientist, and I've consulted. I told companies 20 years ago they were down the wrong track. All they wanted to do was sell the product. They didn't care how they sold it. Just tell a story and make people believe it. Other questions?
One more question. So, if there's actually crystals, could you see them with your naked eye?
No.
So when you say you do that,
That would be cloudy if there was crystals in it, because crystals are millions of molecules, and it will block the passage of light through that. So if you see one and they got it in a non-colored capsule, you hold it up there and it's cloudy, it's crystals. You don't need a microscope. But most people don't cut them open and look at them. Yeah. Other questions?
Alluded to earlier, kind of the amounts, how many milligrams you give to those of us who have had AFib. Is there a certain range that you give?
Every physician has, you know, Dr. Mercola, Dr. Langston, Dr. Sears, all these big natural products doctors, they have their own regimes and their own products. And they may say, well, you take 500 milligrams. That's because his product is poorly absorbed. Right now, Peter Langston is telling people that they only need to take, he's saying 450 to 500 milligrams of the ubiquinol product a day. Well, I can do the same thing with 100. So, you know, there's no yardstick.
Women who are pregnant, is it safe for them? I'm thinking
safe.
of one who suffers from migraines.
I think it's safe. There's a study at the International CoQ meeting in New York last summer that CoQ will reduce the preeclampsia in pregnant women. Big studies now. NIH is going to support it. Matter of fact, in the United Kingdom, there's a study going on being formulated for 9,000 heart failure patients treated with CoQ. Half of them on placebo and conventional therapy, half of them on CoQ and conventional therapy. And we're trying to reproduce the work of Dr. Mortensen. And guess who's funding it? The English Heart Association. Not the drug companies. The Heart Association is recognizing the benefit and is willing to put up these millions and millions of dollars to do this study. It's only a 2-year study. I think they need 5, 6-year study. Does that mean you've had so many pregnancies that it
I was going to say, I've been
hurt
pregnant
you?
like my whole life, and I've taken it on and off. Now you can see my kids and decide if you should take it or not.
Well, it's getting late, and I really want to thank all of you for being here. I appreciated this audience. I was a little bit fearful that I would be, hopefully, not talking over your head. As a scientist, we get to do a lot of that. And but I do appreciate you being here. I hope it's been a learning experience for you. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me.
Next time you have this conversation, I'd like for you to bring up about the hyaluronic acid and the how for skin, what it does for the skin and everything. So I think that'll be another subject.
What acid? Hydrochloric? Oh yeah. Yeah, I've worked with it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, the CoQ10 that I passed out to you tonight is not available in stores because we're too small to get into the marketplace. We do have a very small website you can go to, and I can give that to you, and you can go to that and you can order it online. But it's not available in grocery stores and CVS and that.
I just have one question. Doctors tell you you need multivitamins. How much CoQ10 is in one multivitamin?
None. Unless it's on the label, and the FTC requires them, if they have as much as 2% in that product, of any product, they have to list it on the label. So I have never seen a multivitamin with CoQ. I built a product for a man in Tampa and Naples years ago called UMax 15. It had CoQ with all the essential amino acids and all the essential vitamins in it. He made millions. I starved to death. You know? And until the FTC got after him, and he was doing well. But he said he had 30 milligrams in there and he only had 10.
And you purchase a lot of these vitamins that you see on the shelf. Do you have any idea how they do the analytical testing on there for the potency? No, you don't. And the mere fact that they're not governed by the FDA, they're governed by what, some state regulation whatsoever? They don't. That's a good, because they're not. Because I can go and produce a tablet in my garage and says, put on vitamin C, put it on the market. The FDA,
there's one regulatory agency, and all they do is take these products and analyze them for the amount of CoQ in the capsule. They don't do any other except, is this telling the truth or not telling the truth? And that's associated with the NIH in Washington. But that's the only regulatory agency. The FTC fines a lot of companies. I have a good friend that paid $28 million in a fine for misrepresenting his product. He laughed all the way to the bank. He's still in business. All they did was slap his hands, but they didn't stop him from selling it. I had another company that had a breast augmentation product. They were selling it to teenagers in teenager magazines. And they made ridiculous claims. And, you know, there's all kinds of products out there, and you have to be very, very careful and make sure that you read everything on that label. And at my vision nowadays, I can't even see what's on that label. That's right. They don't have it. They have no. They believe what the company who sold the product to them. They use their data, which a lot of time is bogus, to sell a product. There's a meeting in New York right now, about 500 physicians, and these are naturalists. They believe in vitamins and supplements, and I have a friend from Denmark who's managing a booth there, and he said, I just can't get over at the expense of the Conacher Company to convince the American physician that the ubiquinol is the best CoQ. And this man has just written the history of CoQ, history of selenium. He helped me write this book. But he says it takes money for these companies to make money. And the big companies like the Conacher Company has the money. They have the largest selling force of natural products in the United States. And now they're going after the physicians, because if they think it ever comes to a drug, they're going to slide on the coattails of it. And if it comes a drug, it's going to have to be patented. And the only thing you can patent is the process by which you put it in a pill. It's interesting that I've known companies that since 1968 have tried to make a synthetic out of CoQ, because they know it would be patentable and they could protect their company and their stockholders, and nobody has succeeded. No one. All they've done is made a good rat poison. And as I said, it's God-given, and I don't think we can reproduce it without adversity. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, we've had a couple of you come in late. We still have a few books available for those that have come in late of Dr. Judy's work. Yes, Roger. That's why I'm saying we still have some available. You didn't get one. There's a couple other people that have come in late. And so we'll get those to you, or come on down to the front here. My question is, all the study that he's done, we're going to get to do that for all eternity, right? Investigating what God has developed that's already been there since eternity. That I find very exciting, because maybe someday I can be a scientist too. What's the possibilities? You know, there's no limit. You'd have been a florist if you had to do it over, yeah. And so this is, again, this can be part of our health message that we give as Adventists. And yeah, it'll take business away from the doctors, but that's okay. And so let's close out with a word of prayer here. Father, we thank you for the Sabbath. We thank you for the design of your creation that you have made there for us to investigate and to learn. And these things that you have created do turn our hearts and our minds to you, which we desperately need you in our lives. And we just ask for your watch care as we go into our week, as we go home. And we seek to live our lives out for your honor and glory. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.